So what's next is we're going to talk about setting rules. Now, as a player, you're going to want to be aware what setting rules are going to be at play at the table. This is really for GMs to decide how you want to tweak the game that you're playing. They will absolutely shift the focus, the theme, the flavor, the narrative, everything of your game. You don't have to use any of these at all, but there are some really good ones, and there are some that I always use, and there are some that I would never use. But it really is up to you how you want to flavor your game. I'm going to be reading a little bit because I don't have them all memorized because there is enough, and it just is what it is. So when you're looking at them, you need to also look at some may not go together. So you be cognizant of that, and then if you're using some setting rules, they may affect other parts of the game. Like arcane devices can't be used you can't make arcane device using no PowerPoint setting rule. So for those of you who don't like the idea of a spell point system, well, they have you covered for that by default in the book. So some of the setting rules you have is born a hero. So when you're born a hero, you can take any edge regardless of rank as long as you qualify for the rest of it. So attribute, skills, anything else it requires. But if you're a novice character starting out, that's novice at the very beginning. And there is no kidding, you can see like a heroic, you can go ahead and take that. There's some obvious danger to that, but it's born a hero, and it lets you, again, mold what you want to do with the characters. I have seen it used, and it can be pretty cool, the level of kind of what you're trying to get across. Conviction is another one that a lot of folks use. It's really fun. You earn conviction for doing really great deeds, and then when you get the conviction, you essentially get to add that conviction. You burn it, and you get an extra D6 to every roll that you have going on, starting on the next turn that you burn it. The conviction's not bennies, and you do keep it between sessions. That's the big benefit of it. So bennies reset after every session, but conviction, you do keep it. And then there's some examples of when to use it in Triumph and Tragedy, things like that. But yeah, conviction can be pretty cool, man. I do use it. Creative combat is really neat because normally in combat, if you get a success and then a raise, you're going to deal extra damage. But with creative combat, you don't have to take the extra damage. You can actually roll on this creative combat chart, and neat things can happen. So you can auto shake, you can make a target distracted and vulnerable at the same time from the effects. You can inspire someone, and that throws out bennies. So things like that. It's a pretty cool rule. It gets hard to remember sometimes for people who are really used to Savage Worlds, and it's just benny, and I'm just raise, and I'm doing extra damage. But it can be very cool. I've used it a couple of times, and it can be a very cool play. You'll see people start to gravitate more towards that to have a more narrative focus on the game. I mean, not so much extra damage. Dumb luck is where you get to obviate the critical failure rule, and on a critical failure, double ones on both your trait die and your wild die. You can go ahead and benny that and re-roll it. I like to call this the coward's way out. No, I'm just kidding. It's a very interesting rule, and it's good for certain power feelings of games where you don't want to have the oh no, it's this failure. So you get to do that. Dynamic backlash I mentioned in the power section. So this is the one where you can potentially just start murdering yourself when you get critical failures on arcane skill checks. And again, this would be one that I wouldn't combine with dumb luck. Because it just sort of takes away. Dumb luck. If you don't have a Benny, you can still suffer dynamic backlash, but I wouldn't combine those two. Fanatics is a great settings rule. So essentially, it's like the very pulpy style movie, where if you have Fanatics at the table, when their players are attacking like a big bad guy or even like one of their right hand men or whatever, when the attack comes in and lands, when they're rolling damage at that last moment, one of their loyal lackeys jumps in front of the arrow or the gunfire or the sword thrust, and you end up dealing damage to them. It's a really fun way of padding out a boss fight, and it's a very cool setting rule because in Savage Worlds, your extras, your lackeys are going to they get one wound and they're done. They're either up, down, or off the table. Fast healing is interesting. It allows you to make natural healing rolls once per day instead of the usual once per week. Well, 5 days, but whatever, unless you have regeneration. Gritty damage is a really interesting one that I use in modern games because it's every time you take a wound, you roll on an injury table. Just be warned that it's gritty damage for a reason, and it can be brutal. Hard choices is pretty awesome. That's where the GM doesn't start with bennies at all, but every time the player spend a Benny, you get the Benny. So you start forcing them to really think about how bad they want to, get that raise, or how bad they want to make the skill check. Because you can start stacking bennies. I ran a game where I had, I think it was 30 bennies at the table at one time. And I get to use those against the characters. Heroes Never Die is, again, it's a very cinematic thing where when you go down, you're not going to die at your final wound. It's just sort of, something else happens and you snap back. It's a very pulpy thing, but you can also use it in Star Wars, whatever you want. Star Wars is pulp. It's space pop or pulp. So it's a very interesting one. I don't really use it unless I'm introducing Savage Worlds, but I try not to because I think it sets unrealistic expectations for people new to the system. High Adventure is you can use the Benny to gain a combat edge, which can be very handy. You still gotta meet the rank and the rest of the requirements. So if you're a novice, you can only use novice combat edges. But at least the option is there when you want to use it. It can be fun. I don't think I've ever used it. More skill points. So you can set this one to, instead of the 12 points, you set everyone up to 15 skill points. You normally see this in more modern or futuristic settings where everyone is expected to be educated more than some Dark Age peasant. But it's no harm, no foul. It works. Multiple languages is really interesting because if you come from a very traditional setting where it's we know all these languages, then you basically every character starts with a linguist edge and they have half their smarts. So if your smarts is an 8, you start with 4 languages. I'm sorry, it's equal to your smarts. I was wrong. So if you have a smarts of 8, you're going to have 8 languages. Whereas otherwise you would only have half that. In a normal session without multiple languages or taking the linguist edge. No PowerPoints is kind of what it sounds like. So if a power requires 1 PowerPoint, it's a -1 to the casting spell. And it just follows up with that. And it walks you through how to do certain things. I don't really use it. I'm not a fan of it. But it's just my own personal bias. Skill specialization. This is let's come back to this one because this is one that's very controversial because people coming from other systems tend to freak out when they see this and really want to do it. So let's talk about unarmored. Unarmored hero is awesome for pulp action or some cool if you want to go back to the old school days of the thief acrobat or the thief in D&D where they didn't wear armor, they got better benefits. And you can do that. So if you don't wear armor with this and you're a wild card, you get a +2 to your soak rolls, which helps keep you alive. So it's kind of cool, and it really keeps the feel of that going. Wound cap is interesting because technically in Savage World, you can roll a whole string of raises and just deal an ungodly amount of wounds. And for every, say you deal 10 wounds to an opponent, when you're making the soak roll, you have to soak every one of those wounds. So that's 4 points, 8 points, 12 points, 16 points, and so forth. And you have to pull all those wounds back. Wound cap, I use that a lot because it's just you're never going to suffer more than 4 wounds. I don't in a single hit, I should say. So I don't really like that extended version. It's just, it is what it is. I do use it. Some people don't like it. Some people tend, it's almost default in most games I've ever played in. Now, skill specialization. This is the one where you can start to do really crazy stuff. So Savage Worlds, the skills are very broad. No surprise there. So shooting covers, bows, and everything. If you use skill specialization, you require someone to have bow. So points in bow, points in rifle, points in pistol, points in shotgun, points in law, points in LMG. I think it's ridiculous and it's not really necessary because you're really violating the fast, furious, fun principles of the setting. I could see it being done for people, but it's almost always advised against. It's very few settings really require skill specialization, but it will be your game, and it's not really my business what you do. All you do is experiment with it and see how it works, and realize that players don't have a lot of points and they're not doing the things they want to do. But that's it. Thanks, and stay savage.